is Valley News Live at 10.
Thanks for joining us for Valley News Live at 10. I'm Stacey Van Dyke.
And I'm Justin Betty. Lately, potential police misconduct has gotten a lot of attention, whether it's the detainment of Miami Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill over the weekend, or incidents closer to home, like a situation where a couple people say they were helping victims and then they were assaulted, some over-aggressive policing while helping someone in downtown Fargo. Today,
Valley News Team's Ethan Kramer spoke with police and a local defense attorney about how these types of situations happen, your rights, and the police perspective. He has details in this VNL investigation.
Officers never go into a situation intending to use force.
That was Captain Chris Helmick with the Fargo Police Department speaking about the use of force on the job. Well, the video on your screen shows a Fargo police officer taking an individual to the ground. Fargo PD says their officers are trained to use the least amount of force that is reasonable when dealing with a situation.
When they go into a situation where they have to use force, is use the minimal amount of force that's reasonable. That's the legal guideline, and that's what we try to follow.
Attorney Jennifer Braun for Alland Law Firm says the importance of recording an interaction with police goes a long way because it may protect a person's rights.
Record, because that will, later on, it'll protect that person's rights.
Sunday, Dolphins receiver Tyreek Hill was detained and forcefully taken to the ground by Miami-Dade police.
I'm glad you brought up the Tyreek Hill incident.
Braun thinks that the officer handled it incorrectly and escalated things too quickly.
I don't know that it was so much about his behavior, suspicious criminal activity, reluctance to comply immediately with the officer's commands. He was on the edge of invoking his rights, and he wasn't rolling over, so to speak.
Captain Helmick thinks it's in the best interest of a citizen to just comply with the officer during a situation. And if the citizen doesn't like how the officer handled it, they can reach out to the department because they say they take those complaints very seriously.
The officer starts asking them to do something or telling them to do something. Best at that moment just to do what they're asking or telling them to do, because there's probably a good reason behind that. But at the end of that, if there's a question about why the officer had them do that, or there's a complaint about how the officer handled that, we want to know that.
Braun says if someone thinks they have been assaulted by an officer and think they have evidence, she says to consult with a lawyer sooner than later.
There are statutes of limitations with these types of cases, so it's always sooner the better. And they can work with that attorney to determine whether or not that they would have a viable claim to pursue, basically. Absolutely. They need to know what their rights would be with respect to that situation.
In Fargo, Ethan Kramer, Valley News Live.
That attorney, Jennifer Braun, says these types of cases involving excessive force can be tricky because officers do have qualified immunity, which makes it tough to possibly hold an officer accountable.
All right. So